The abandoned military village. Have you ever heard about a place that everyone in your town was terrified of, but nobody could explain why? When I was a senior in high school, my friends and I finally decided to explore an abandoned military village that had been sitting empty for decades. People said it had been used during World War II and the Cold War. Hundreds of military families once lived there before it was abandoned. Over the years, the place became surrounded by creepy rumors, ghosts, secret tunnels, military experiments, you name it. Honestly, we didn't believe any of it. We just wanted to see it for ourselves. Around 11 p.m., 4 of us piled into my car and drove toward the old base. The entrance was hidden behind an overgrown dirt road with a faded "No Trespassing" sign barely visible through the trees. We kept driving until we reached an old security gate. Nobody was there. I got out, lifted the gate by hand, and we drove deeper inside. A minute later, we saw something that instantly felt wrong. Old furniture was scattered along both sides of the road. Beds, dressers, tables. It looked like an entire neighborhood had packed up and simply disappeared. After another gate, we finally entered the village. It looked like something straight out of a horror movie. Rows of abandoned homes. A crumbling church covered in graffiti. Not a single light anywhere. Only silence. Even the air felt different. There wasn't any wind, no insects, no birds. It was so quiet that every footstep echoed through the empty streets, making it feel like someone else was walking just a few steps behind us. We started exploring the church first, expecting maybe some creepy graffiti or broken furniture. Nothing, just dust and an eerie feeling that wouldn't go away. After that, we entered one of the abandoned houses. Some rooms looked like they'd been destroyed by a hurricane. Others looked like people had walked out only yesterday. An old kitchen table was still standing. A broken picture frame sat on the floor. For a second, it felt less like we were exploring an abandoned place and more like we were trespassing into someone's home. One of my friends, Scott, kept whispering, "Guys, we're not alone." We laughed it off. Scott was always freaking out over nothing. Then, creak. Every one of us froze. It sounded exactly like someone slowly stepping across an old wooden floor. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. My friend Alex finally called out, "Hello? Anyone there?" The sound stopped instantly. Complete silence. That was enough for me. I told everyone we needed to leave. As we walked toward the front door, Scott suddenly grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. He pointed toward the window. 3 human shadows slowly moved across the outside wall of the neighboring house. Not 1, not 2, 3. They weren't running, they were walking, like they knew exactly where we were. I carefully peeked outside. The shadows disappeared around the back of the house, toward our direction. I whispered, "Run to the car. Right now. Without another word, all four of us sprinted. The car came into view. Then Scott let out the loudest scream I'd ever heard. Standing beside my back seat was a tall woman wearing a filthy black dress. One leg was already inside my car, like she was about to climb in and wait for us. For a split second, she didn't move. She just stood there, completely still, with her hand resting on the car door as if she'd been caught in the middle of something. The moment she heard Scott scream, she slowly turned her head, then bolted into the abandoned church. We didn't stop. We jumped into the car, slammed the doors, and tore out of that place so fast. I didn't even look in the rearview mirror. I was too afraid of what I might see following us out. For years, we argued about what happened. Maybe they were homeless people, maybe something worse. But one question still bothers me. How long had they been watching us before we ever realized we weren't alone? And if Scott hadn't looked toward the car, would we have opened the back door without knowing someone was already waiting inside? To this day, that's a question I never want answered.
The woman behind the window. Have you ever ignored that little voice in your head telling you to leave? I have. And if I had listened to it that night, I probably wouldn't still think about that house every time I hear someone humming. About 6 years ago, my girlfriend Emma and I were obsessed with exploring abandoned places. Every weekend we'd drive through back roads looking for forgotten houses and old farms. We never damaged anything. We just looked around, took a few pictures, and left. At least, that was always the plan. One Saturday evening, we found an old farmhouse hidden at the end of a gravel road. The roof was sagging, the paint had peeled away, and tall weeds covered the porch. The strangest part? There wasn't a single sound. No birds, no wind, just silence. Emma smiled and said, "Jackpot." I didn't share her excitement. The front door was already hanging open. Inside, everything was covered in dust, but it didn't look abandoned in the usual way. Furniture was still in place, family pictures were scattered across the floor, and an old clock was frozen at exactly 2:17. The air smelled damp, like the house had been sealed shut for years. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, yet a few spots on the floor looked strangely clean, almost as if someone had walked through recently. Then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Fresh, muddy footprints. They came in through the back door, crossed the hallway, and disappeared. No footprints leading back outside. Emma looked at me and whispered, "Someone's been here recently." I wanted to leave immediately. She convinced me to spend just 5 more minutes inside. "We've come this far," she said. "Let's at least check upstairs." The staircase groaned beneath every step until we reached the second floor. There were 3 bedrooms. The first was empty except for a broken dresser. The second still had a child's bed with an old teddy bear sitting in the corner, covered in dust. On the wall beside the bed were faint pencil marks measuring a child's height. The last mark ended years ago. For some reason, that bothered me more than anything else. It felt like someone had simply walked away one day and never returned. The last bedroom was different. Its door was almost closed. I slowly pushed it open. Inside sat an old wooden rocking chair beside the window. It slowly rocked, back and forth. Emma nervously laughed. "It's probably just the house settling." Except every window in the room was shut. There wasn't enough wind to move a single curtain. I stepped closer and placed my hand on the chair. It stopped instantly. Then we heard it. A woman softly humming the same 3 notes, again and again. It wasn't loud. It sounded like someone quietly singing to themselves from somewhere inside the house. Emma grabbed my arm. "Jack, let's go." The humming suddenly stopped. For a few seconds, there was complete silence. Then a floorboard creaked behind us. Slowly, I switched my phone to the front-facing camera. Standing behind us was an elderly woman. Long white hair, a faded grey dress. Her head was tilted slightly. She wasn't moving. She was just staring at us. I spun around. The room was empty. Nothing. Emma whispered, "Please tell me you saw her too." I nodded. Neither of us wanted to stay another second. As soon as we reached the stairs, the humming started again. This time, it was downstairs. It sounded closer now, like whoever was making it knew exactly where we were. We rushed toward the front door. It was shut. I knew we'd left it open. I pulled with everything I had. It wouldn't move. It felt like someone was holding it from the other side. Then Emma screamed. The rocking chair, the one we'd left upstairs, was now sitting in the downstairs hallway, slowly rocking by itself, back and forth, back and forth. Neither of us stopped to question how it got there. I slammed my shoulder into the front door. It finally burst open. We sprinted to the truck without looking back. As I started the engine, Emma whispered, "Don't look at the upstairs window." Of course, I looked. Standing behind the dusty glass was the old woman, one hand pressed against the window, smiling, not waving, just smiling. As we drove away, I glanced into the rearview mirror one last time. The upstairs window was empty, but for the briefest second, I could have sworn I saw someone standing on the front porch, watching us leave. Months later, I found old records showing the house once belonged to an elderly widow who vanished without a trace. No body was ever found. The farmhouse has since been demolished, but every now and then, usually when my own house is completely silent, I still hear someone softly humming from another room. And I've learned one thing since that night. Some abandoned houses aren't empty. They're just waiting for someone curious enough to walk inside.